Ad Hoc Committee on Transportation meeting. This meeting will be held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified, and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. This meeting is open to the public, and the public is welcome to attend in person. All persons wishing to attend this meeting by virtual means may do so via YouTube Sumter School District board meetings and Sumter School District's Facebook page. Our vision: the Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to reach their full potential. Our mission: Sumter School District is committed to providing a safe, nurturing, and high-quality educational environment that supports diversity and equips students for local and global success. Committee members are as follows. Myself, Jeffrey Zell, I am the chairman of this Ad Hoc Committee on Transportation. Board member and trustee Tara Kosar-Johnson and trustee Sherry White. Our staff members in attendance today are is Dr. Wright, superintendent of our school district. I don't believe Mr. Myers is here. Or is he virtual? Okay. We have Miss Shantae Scott, the administrative manager to the superintendent and the board of trustees. And then we also have Miss Galloway in the back there taking notes. So, and I want to thank all of you who are watching on live stream and who attended today in person. We appreciate your interest and your involvement. And thank you, Ms. Johnson. Welcome.
Just in time.
And without further ado, I call this meeting to order. Please allow for a moment of silence and then followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. Let me log back in. All right.
Mr. Myers is here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Myers. I appreciate your attendance here today. All right, so we will move on to opening remarks. So good afternoon, and welcome to our first Ad Hoc Committee on Transportation. I want to say thank you to the highly talented and hardworking and my fellow committee members, Trustee Kosar-Johnson and Trustee White. Thank you. Secondly, I would like to say thank you for the district leaders for being here, Dr. Wright, Mr. Myers, and the very versatile Miss Shantae Scott. Thank you. And then I would also be remiss if I don't give proper credit to and thanks to Dr. Canty and Vice Chairwoman Bonnie Disney for taking our suggestion and allowing this and establishing this committee. It's vital work that we're going to be doing here, and it's very foundational. And we'll forego the introductions just for time's sake here, if that's all right. I think everybody knows everybody here. If you don't, see me after. I'm also abundantly clear that it's a Friday at 3:30 in the first week of spring in South Carolina. So I'm not going to be in your way of your weekend, okay? But the work that we are doing is vitally important, as I stated, regarding transportation demands. We have some clear and obvious problems that we have to face as a district. We understand that these problems are very foundational and fundamental, and that causes a ripple effect into every other area of academics, from meals to athletics. And so it does require the amount of attention and effort, whatever we can muster, to solve these problems. And I think that this transportation committee can have a very marked impact on education, achievement, and student outcome overall. So I'm very excited to work with my fellow trustees in the district on that endeavor. Trust and teamwork is what is going to bring success to this committee. That is foundational. And my goal is to go after problems, not people. And so I say this with the most frankness and earnest way that I can. I just ask, please, everybody to be as open and forthright as we can to the problems that exist, or else we can't make the most sound policies and make this most sound judgment that we can. So we're going after problems, not people. Would anybody else like to give any opening remarks before we move on to the next agenda item? All right. All right, so moving on to 2.1, approval of the agenda with a consent approval without further delay and objection. Any objections? All right, this agenda will stand as approved. All right, moving on to item 3, transportation issues and possible solutions. I think that may be a little premature for that at this juncture, because we have just established the committee, and we have not really had a chance to form brainstorming events and meetings and things of that nature, and to deliberate. So we will obviously do this in the future, and we will provide our recommendations to the full board in due time and in future meetings. And if anybody has any suggestions while just please chime in. All right, this is my first time doing this. I appreciate you extending me the grace.
Mr. Chair, at some point, I want to kind of give a thought to something that we are in the beginning stages of discussing with our executive team as well as the committee that might give us, I don't know if it's a solution, but it might give us some relief maybe going into the next school year.
Yes, sir.
You ready for that now?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're looking at start and stop times for schools. And so if you imagine if we had elementary schools starting school 15 minutes earlier, high schools starting school 15 minutes later, stop times would be the same, 15 minutes later, 15 minutes earlier. That will give us an additional 30-minute window of time for which the transportation could take place. Because part of our problem is that we're sharing buses.
Sure.
So short of us having enough drivers to have independent buses, that's one example. Now, for us in the district, that's in the beginning stages. I've talked to, I think, I've talked to all 3 of the high school principals and a few of the elementary principals, because those are the bookends that would be most affected,
Yes,
if
sir.
you will.
Absolutely.
But that's just something that I've kind of been brainstorming a little bit and wanted to give us all time to thought. Now, I don't think it's productive to try to do that now because we're just about to the month of April. But, you know, and we got testing and so forth coming, but maybe as a help, I've already talked with Mr. Myers. Haven't put this out publicly yet, ladies and gentlemen, because I gotta, want to make sure that we're not fixing one problem and causing another one. But that's just something I thought about, because that'll give us an extra 30-minute window of time for every bus to be able to get to where it needs to be. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I am so glad that that's the first thing that came out of your mouth,
Okay.
to be honest, because that is something that I had been brainstorming and wanted to be able to get some input
okay,
from the logistical people about how that would work, because it seems to me if we had that little extra time
right,
on both ends, that, and it, of course, I don't know all the details, and that's why I'd like to get the logistics.
right.
But it seems to me it can't be that hard to start 15 minutes earlier or later, as the case may be. So thank you very much for already, I'm glad to know we're thinking in the same lane already.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And
You're
I do have an observation in the form of a question. If I understand you correctly, the elementary schools would be the recommended ones to, well, everyone really would end up moving up about 15.
Right, because that's the way it is right now, Ms. Johnson. Elementary schools in our district start first. So the way to do it without impacting everyone is 15 minutes earlier for elementary schools, 15 minutes later starting for high school. Now, the advantage on the other end is elementary school would end 15 minutes earlier each day, and high school would be 15 minutes later.
The only thing that I would ask that consideration is given to in a situation like that, many of the students are currently being picked up at 6 o'clock in the morning. For
Right.
an elementary student, that means he or she would be picked up at 5:45.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit of adjustment there, but we're just trying to, because right now we're having, particularly with middle and high school, we're having difficulty getting them to school. And I would love for us to get to the point where if we had enough drivers, then we wouldn't, because we can get the buses. But right now, just trying to, I expect that we'll be visiting this again as time goes on, yes, ma'am. But
Yes.
thank you for that, I appreciate that.
And thank you for the suggestion.
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Dr. Wright, I also share their sentiments. I think that that's, going into this endeavor, we can't leave no stone unturned.
That's right.
Right,
That's
so we have to look at every level of, every angle that we can, from administration to logistics to HR to recruiting and retention. Nothing will go unturned. So
Yes, sir.
I very much appreciate that
Thank you.
suggestion. I think that I'm with you. I hope that that is a tool in our toolbox, but I hope that we don't have to employ it. I hope that we can actually turn the hiring issues around. That's my hope. So, but thank you for leading me into the segue of, on the agenda. So I'll state the purpose of obviously this committee and this meeting. The purpose is clearly to bring about change in a system that has been, let's call it what it is. It's broken. And I'm not saying it's a failed system, but it's a failing system. And I do believe there's a difference, and I think that our operations folks certainly have, like they've stated in the past, work magic. But I do believe there's probably a lot of things in their way that is preventing them from getting the results that our children's demand, our families demand. And so that's where I think that we, having the latitude and longitude and reach that you may not have, going into the rest of this school year and into the summer, I think that we can make some pretty heavy, some pretty big changes to the process as is, to compare to what is as is. So. That said, that's the purpose. Expectations as far as, and please chime in if, this is a conversation around a problem, so please feel free to chime in, anyone at this table, if something comes up. So first I want to establish we talked about the purpose. Obviously, it's a very obvious purpose. I want to establish some expectations, at least from this committee. I don't think, and then let me refer back to that first statement I made, is that trust and transparency is what's going to allow us to be successful in this committee. And I think I can speak for everybody when I say that we all want that. So as the chairperson or chairman of this committee, I will, to the district and to the board at large, I will ensure that the district and the entire board has access to all findings and data. We will be fully transparent while providing professional courtesy to the district, while also meeting the board's transparency requirements to our friends in the local news and in the community at large as well. I think that they'll get nothing less from us in that endeavor. As I stated before, nothing is off the table. We got to consider every possible solution and every angle of fixing this problem. From, as I stated, from adjusting, as our chairwoman of the board mentioned in a previous board meeting, possibly adjusting schedules to meet, moving core classes if at all possible. Again, we have to pursue. We have to find out what will work and what won't work, but certainly we're going to put a pin in every single idea that we have and come back to it and see if it will work. This committee will ensure that we do not become burdensome and intrusive, and if we do, please be confident to bring it to my attention, Mr. Myers, because if you haven't noticed about myself, when I go all in, and I go very, very fast and hard. That said, I understand that everybody in this room has a job, and I happen to have the luxury of being a retired veteran, and so you're going to get a whole lot of Jeff Zell, but I want to work with you. I want to help this district really get back in good, solid ground in this area, and I think that we can do a lot of great work together if we're just open and honest with one another. And I'm certainly going to rely heavily on my fellow board members, very talented and very, very happy that these two individuals were placed on this committee with me. So please, if I'm asking for too much too often, just let me know. All right. As far as expectations for the district, the district, particularly everyone in this room, is a linchpin to our success on this committee, which is the success of the board and the community, and most importantly, our students. We need to have full access to data, people, offices, and departments to collect data and to make sound considerations and to present those considerations to the full board. And as far as, was there anything that the board members would like to add to these expectations?
Mr. Chair, the only other thing that I would add, and I think it's kind of the cherry on the sundae, so to speak, is I think the ultimate goal is we want to get all our students to school on time, all the time. There will
Yes.
be that discrepancy here and there, things will happen. But as a rule, we would rather it was the rule and not the exception.
Amen.
that
That's
they
right.
get there on time. So I think that's the ultimate goal. And again, I agree with everything you said as far as transparency, access. We don't want to be overbearing, but, and I think based on what I know of my fellow board members here, we are sponges for the knowledge that y'all have.
That's right.
And you are the ones that have it, and we need to know it. And I look forward to it's a conversation,
That's
as you
right.
said. And I look forward to dialogue, because just because we say, oh, doesn't mean that is something that I am bent and determined that this is the answer.
That's right.
That is, it's a thought to be explored.
Sure.
So I look forward to having all that, the dialogue with the people who actually hold the information.
Absolutely. Okay, that actually leads me into my question as far as if you have anything to offer us, Dr. Wright, as far as what do you expect from this committee? What are your do's and don'ts? And, what do you expect from us? And we hope that we can deliver.
Well, first of all, I appreciate this forum because, excuse me, we're going to have to look at the way that transportation employees are compensated. Excuse me, because we are in a competitive market. And so, in addition to fixing schedules and so forth and so on, the bottom line is we got to have more people. Excuse me. Thank you. Because right now, we are trying to operate a system with about half of the bus drivers that we need. And until we fix that problem, we can put Band-Aids on and come up with solutions, but that's ultimately what we're going to need. So.
Agreed. That's absolutely. I think we need to be far more competitive in multiple areas.
Sure.
And I think that we all, like, again, that cliche I keep, there's no stone unturned. And so I hope to work with HR, Mr. Myers, whomever's willing to work with us to get us that data. I understand that there is a salary survey in the works currently, and I'm very, very interested in what you all find in that I think that's going to be very enlightening. And I think it's going to be very eye-opening for us as a board and the community. Because, we have to be competitive, as you stated. All right, so is there anything else regarding expectations? Okay.
I guess what I wanted to say, excuse me for this cough and spell. I just want us to keep an open mind that the solution to fixing this transportation is going to be multifaceted. We're going to need all of these things that we're talking about and not it just be limited to one sphere. I mean, it's, and somebody said to me, I'll say this really quickly. A friend of mine said to me, William, you know why we're having a problem attracting and retaining employees across the nation, don't you? I said, why? So we lost 1 million people during COVID. I don't know if people really understand that, but we lost 1 million employees, 1 million people died during COVID, and most of them were what we call in this nation general laborers. You didn't hear about a lot of CEOs losing their lives, but you heard about a lot of workers. And so it's going to take a while for us to recover from that, to be honest with you. So anyway, just wanted to add that food for thought. But we're excited about the opportunity to work with the board to try to come up with some solutions that deliver our children to school on time. Sounds simple, y'all, but it's a complex problem right now.
I'm confident that we can get there.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
All right, so as far as expectations, I'm going to, I think this kind of overlaps. So I'm going to talk about goals of mine as the chairman, and I would like, my fellow board members to chime in on this if they have any additions. And so some of the goals are going to touch on things we've already spoke about. So the strategic goal is to fix a broken logistical system by any cost-effective means possible, while safely and timely delivering our students to school consistently and predictably. That's just a long way of saying what Ms. White Trustee White just said. So to fully utilize, I think this is a big one. We really, I think reporting is a major issue. I think the community members, our moms and dads, would be very appreciative if we could fully utilize the technology at our disposal as far as reporting, alerting for delays. I think they would give us extend some grace our way. So if we're not fully utilizing those, we should be. And I believe Mr. Myers can give us, a lot of insight on that as we move forward through this committee and this process. And so to fully utilize technology and reporting methods that exist and adopt new ones where necessary to ensure parents and children are aware of late buses and delays. That will be a goal of this committee for sure. To provide safe and professional working environment for our drivers. Now, if that's a problem as far as, I understand we're doing a code of conduct review in the district, and that's vitally important because it's just something we continue to hear about. Now, that said, of my opinion, and I believe I'm speaking for most here, is that school bus is an extension of the classroom as far as I'm concerned, and should be afforded all the same protections and of professionalism and safe environment that we demand for our classrooms. And so that will certainly be a goal of this committee as well. And then to kind of bookend what you said, Dr. Wright, is that we have to be competitive with and enticing with our wages and our incentives, and that from hiring to retention to recruiting to maintenance, and so I'm very, very much looking forward to working with finance and HR and reading that salary study. I think, like I said, I think that they'll give us a lot of insight. With all that to say, to meet the ultimate goal of improving student achievement and student outcome, that is the goalpost at the end of the field. And so this committee will spend any amount of time and effort getting to that end. And I believe with the brainpower we have on this committee, with the cohesiveness we have with the district, I believe that we can get to that end. So I'm very excited about that. Okay, so we'll move on to timelines. Please chime in, Dr. Wright, as you see fit. You've been doing this a lot longer than me. All right, so, and anybody else for that matter, if you have any insight, please. The goal of this committee is to attempt to offer recommendations to the district and the full board promptly, but specifically to how the district, to have the district implement our suggestions by the end of the school year. So goal one would be to have a handful of suggestions to give to the full board by the end of the school year so that we can work diligently through the summer to implement those new practices. Now, I believe that our findings aren't going to be just, I don't think they'll all need to be required to be voted on by this board. So there are probably some things internally that you can just take our suggestion, if you so choose, and implement them at the executive level. So we will be handing those. We'll, of course, confer with our chairman, our parliamentarian, our clerk to make sure that, we're on the up and up and we're not skirting any legal lines. But certainly I don't think that every idea is going to have to be an agenda item in a meeting. So, but we'll see. More obviously to come on that.
Chairperson Zell.
Yes.
To that point, even if we were to look at trying to get fixes in place for next school term, if an opportunity presents for us to be able to activate some things now,
Sure.
like before we move forward, or as we move forward, would that be on the table as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of this timeline stuff is just, to be honest, it's to meet the legal requirements of, readings in the board and the executive meetings or the agenda items and everything. But if there's something that we can certainly get the bureaucracy out of our way and implement it now, obviously with the advice of our board leadership, I'm all in. I think that's something that, of course, we'll converse with the district, make sure it's not out of bounds or out of our lane, if you will. But yes, ma'am, I'm totally with you on that. I think that any immediate ideas that we could immediately implement or introduce, let's do it. Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, to
Yes, ma'am.
that point, a question for Dr. Wright. As Chairman Zell said, you having been doing this much longer than we have, there are some things that, well, there are some things, we're starting to read minds now.
That's okay.
There are some things that would fall under administrative purview, correct?
Yes,
That
ma'am.
if we deemed it to be a workable solution, that could be administratively done without a board policy or things like that. Is that not correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Very good. And you will
Right,
tell
and
us those things,
Right, and
correct?
that's operationally with many things that go on in the school district. Here's one example. The solution that I mentioned earlier, I would advise that is not something that we start April 1 or, from now to the end of the school year. Just because I'm gonna have some elementary moms and dads that'll probably be a little hot with me anyway. But we understand that, and that's a part of what we do. But things of that nature that create a paradigm shift, you want to wait and do those at the beginning of a school year if you can, or certainly at Christmas break. You don't want to ever do those things. Something as simple as increasing our efforts for recruitment and retention of bus drivers. Those are things that we could be working on now, figuring out decisions that you all might want to look at making in terms of bonuses or whatever. Those are the kinds of things. Because right now we've got twofold things. First of all, we're not competitive for the area. But we also need to figure out how to do something to keep the drivers that we have, because we've got some people that have done some amazing work for us to keep this thing afloat this year. We do not deliver every child on time. That's true. I've seen some buses myself. But if you look at our delivery rates, it's still pretty doggone good for the amount of drivers that we have. and so, while we're fixing the plan, I just want to make sure that we also try to, take care of the people that we have.
Understood.
Already, yes, sir.
right.
So all of that, but those are the kind of things, Mrs. White, that we can be doing now. Some of the systemic changes that we need to make, I think we have to play them by ear. We're getting ready to go into exams and things of that nature. So it just depends on what we're talking about, but this is an all hands on deck approach, in my opinion.
Amen, that's right.
Absolutely. So, thank you.
And, Mr. Chair, I was just going to say in response to something that Dr. Wright just said, yeah, and I feel like we are probably currently doing some things. I think I vaguely remember something that we've done along the lines of bus driver recognition, but not, I mean, money is important, and it's important to a lot of people. But in addition to monetary recognition and pay, I think pat on the back or recognition at the district level or even the school level where bus drivers are called out specifically during a program or whatever it may be. It may be something as simple as a gift card, I mean, just whatever. But I think those things go a long way as well towards recognizing and motivating people to feel like they're important to the process.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. And to Dr. Wright's point, I think we all that have been around some sort of bureaucracy for some time, we understand that policy implementation is maybe the most important element of a successful policy. And that is, you may have the best idea in the world, but if you don't implement it correctly, it's not going to work. And like you said, you may create one problem trying to solve another. And I think disrupting the school year is something that we certainly do not want to do if we can get away with it. And so I very much share that sentiment with you. Of course, we'll look at every angle of that. We'll have many conversations regarding this. But I think that ultimately there are probably some things that we're going to be able to implement right away, and then some big systemic changes that we have that summer. This coming summer to really get at the work. So, all right. Well, I appreciate your comments on that. And so, just to finish as far as timelines, this committee's goal is to provide updates to the entire board during the regularly scheduled biweekly meetings, with the hopes that we can have a final list of solutions for the board by the end of the school year to give us this summer to work on them. And that said, I had just one question. Is there anybody that would like to add to this discussion before we move on to the next agenda item? All right, well, not hearing any. We'll be moving on to item 5. I'm sorry, excuse me. Item 4, steps moving forward. Well, I think without restating everything we just said, going forward, we plan on having regular meetings, regular conversations, working with the community, working with whomever can help us, advise us, give, I always say good ideas come from everywhere. And so we have a very, and I'm very proud of this board and what we're doing so far. We have a community that their interest is roaring back in the public school system, and I think that's an amazing thing, and thank you, Dr. Wright, for helping us do that. That was my promise to my constituents. We have some people in the room right now who I'm not going to name, but we have a very motivated community willing to help us out. And we're going to tap into every resource that we can to make sure that this problem is fixed permanently, that we have permanent solutions in place, and not just as Band-Aids. So that is, I don't really have much more to add to that as far as steps moving forward. Is there anybody anybody have anything to add to that discussion? Sure.
If I may, Mr. Chair, for steps moving forward, because we want to come up with, we need the data, we need information, and we want to see if there's anything that we can get in place for this year, and certainly moving forward. That being said, we need the input again, from those who have the information. But I just would like to throw out two things that just came to me as we were kind of talking, a couple of things Dr. Wright said and Ms. Kaiser Johnson said. Because it's about the people. We need more people who are committed to doing this. And that would be a major resolution for a lot of the problems. And so whoever within the district that would need to address this, I'm thinking some sort of job fair. Maybe we could target retired military folks who can actually, drive a bus in the morning, the afternoon. But I mean, target specific areas, because retired military would make great bus drivers. And of course, looking at the wages, let's look at, I had a couple of things jotted down here. Signing and retention incentives, not necessarily, we need to look at the salaries certainly, because I did see what the base is right now, and I was appalled. And therefore not surprised that it's hard to get people to come and stay and do the job. So we need to look at that and what latitude we have on the amount of, what kind of increase we can give. However, we do need signing, I think, to look at signing and retention incentives. We'll give you this if you sign on, but you need to stay. And if you stay this long, then we'll, this is an incentive for doing that. And the recognition is very important for people who do a good job. And when you have a bus driver who's always on time or has a 95% on-time rate, recognize them. And so those are just some things that kind of popped into my head as people were talking. If we can get the right people within the district looking that, because those are things that we could address sooner rather than later, I think.
Thank you, Trustee White. I appreciate that. And I share that sentiment as well. I do believe that we need to recognize without restating everything you said, we need to recognize those efforts and those people who are making that effort. Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take a bunch of kids to school is definitely at whatever subpar pay scale is definitely, that is definitely a selfless act. And so I understand very well that human beings are motivated intrinsically, extrinsically rather, and so we have to meet people where they're at, is what I'm trying to say. And I agree with all the recommendations, and so far I don't think we have any disagreement. And so that's certainly something we'll be looking at. I don't know what it looks like in the end as far as, of course, we'll have to offer it to the full board for approval. But certainly one thing I want to really focus on is that salary study. I think that's going to be crucial. I don't think we get across that goal line without that piece. And to be honest, looking at the numbers thus far, the preliminary numbers as far as the shortages we have, I mean, like you said, we're operating about 60% or so, and all of which are part-time employees, correct? Right, and so I mean, I don't think a salary increase of a small amount, or I don't think that that's a large push, to be honest. And so we'll see what that looks like. And I understand that we've got to be able to compensate these people for their time. It's certainly a buyer's market, it's a competitive market, and we have to make this district competitive. So does anybody have any other discussion on this topic?
I just have a clarifying question, and I think Dr. Wright shared it with us, and we also perhaps heard it in one of the board meetings. What was the most recent increase that the bus drivers received, and when was that?
Sure.
They were part of the 8% and 4-step restoral before the turn of the calendar year. It was implemented January, is that right?
Got it in December,
Say it again.
December 15th pay period.
They got it December 15th pay period. Thank you, Ms. Scott.
So 8% is the number?
8%
Okay.
increase, and And if your steps were frozen for the last 4 cycles, then you got those restored.
Okay, understood, okay. Well, 8% on top of a $10 to $12 pay is, it's not much.
Not a lot.
It's not,
That's not what their base pay is, it's not that.
right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got to get ourselves competitive for sure. Anything else the board like to, Mr. Myers, do you have anything to add to this, or?
I'm just excited about the opportunity that anybody, anyone
Yes, sir.
else is stepping forward
Right.
to take with this, because it's a big undertaking.
That's right.
And I'm just pleased to know that we do have those fighters who are out there, like yourselves
That's
and
right.
others, who are going to assist us
That's
in
right.
this. And we look forward to working together and making this happen for our drivers and especially for our children.
Sure, absolutely,
Yes.
and I appreciate that. And I will tell you, you know, and not to get too off script here, but there's a whole community of Sumterites that demand this problem gets addressed. And this is us doing just that. And so I'm just excited about it. I think this is I'm not going to say easy undertaking, but I'm certainly going to say it's very doable with the talent that we have on this board.
Absolutely.
And with the talent we have in this room. And so I certainly think it's something that you're going to see big things from this, and hold us accountable.
Absolutely.
Hold us
Yes,
accountable.
sir.
All right, so without any more discussion, we will move on to the closing remarks. All right, it is my pleasure and honor to preside over this committee and to have the full faith of the chairman and the board leadership. We, as a committee, will be as open and forthright in our assessment as possible. That is owed to all of you in this room and to our community at large. This committee's goal is to earn back the trust of the good people of Sumter and to provide that we are good stewards, of their tax dollars and their children's education. And we are a functional and integral part of this community. Lastly, good ideas come from everywhere. I've stated that before. So anyone hearing my voice, whether it be in this room with me, live streaming, or reading in the Sumter Item, don't forget to subscribe to the Sumter Item. Shameless play. Anyone reading the item, we need you. We need your ideas, we need your candor, and we need your help. And so that's my pitch. I do believe that we can get after this with much vigor, and it's much anticipated by the community that we fix this in the most permanent way that we can. And so nothing is off the table. I'm going to continue to say that. So without further remarks from this board or this district, we'll move on to 5.2, adjournment. It's Friday, and I know that's what we all want to hear. And so without hearing no objections, we will move this meeting to be adjourned. So thank you. God bless you all. God bless these schools. God bless America. And have a great weekend.
4:13, aye.